My name is Elena. I am 29 years old. Before today, I would have told you I was the luckiest woman on earth. I had everything: a wonderful family, a job I loved, and a man who I thought was my other half. His name is Marcus. We met in San Francisco at a charity event, and it felt like we were the only two people in the room. He had the brightest smile I had ever seen, and his laugh was so warm it made me feel safe. He was smart and kind, and he talked about a future with me like it was the only thing that mattered. He told me he was a real estate investor, and he was always traveling for work. It sounded exciting, a little bit like a movie. He was always so charming and loving. He'd bring me flowers for no reason and write little notes for me to find. He made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. When he proposed to me on a quiet beach at sunset, I didn't even have to think about my answer. It was a perfect yes. We planned the wedding for a whole year. We picked a beautiful vineyard in Napa Valley, California. It was just how I had always pictured it: rolling green hills, perfect rows of grapevines, and a big old wooden barn for the party. My parents were so happy. They had always loved Marcus. He just had that way about him. Everyone did. Hey everyone, if you're watching this story and you feel like it speaks to you, or if you're just enjoying it so far, please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss what happens next. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It means so much to me to know who is out there. The day started like a dream. The morning sun was soft and golden, shining through the window of the little cottage where I was getting ready. My dress was hanging on the door, a cloud of white silk and lace that made my heart flutter every time I looked at it. My best friend, Sarah, was there with me, fussing over my hair and making jokes to keep me from getting too nervous. Everything felt so right. When it was time to put on the dress, it was a little hard to get the tiny buttons on the back to close. My mom came in to help, her eyes all misty. "You look beautiful, my love," she whispered, and I felt a pang of pure happiness. The dress fit like it was made just for me. We all walked out into the yard to take some photos. The air was warm and smelled like lavender and cut grass. The photographer told me I was a natural, and I couldn't stop smiling. How could I not? I was about to marry the man of my dreams, the man who was going to be my forever. Then it happened. A tiny little pearl that held one of the straps of my dress popped off. It was no big deal, just a small, silly thing. But my mom insisted on fixing it right away. She said, "It's bad luck to walk down the aisle with a broken dress." She grabbed a little sewing kit from her purse and told me to go wait in the old storage room by the barn where it was quiet. She said she'd be right there. I walked into the little room, a small, dark space filled with old chairs and empty wine barrels. It was cool and quiet, a nice break from the busy world outside. I stood there, holding my breath, feeling the nervous excitement bubble up inside me. I could hear the music starting outside, a soft, slow melody that made my heart beat faster. I was so close. And then I heard it. A voice. It was coming from the other side of the wall, from a little closet or maybe another small room next to me. I wasn't trying to listen, but the voice was loud, a man's voice. Marcus's voice. "Yeah, I'm getting ready to get married," he said, and I heard a laugh. But it wasn't his warm laugh. It was a cold, sharp sound. "She's so clueless, man. Thinks this is a fairy tale." My stomach dropped. I froze, my hand clutching the silk of my dress. Who was he talking to? "I know, right?" he said again, his voice even lower now, like he was sharing a secret. "Her family's loaded, dude. All that old money. This little wedding is nothing. She signed the prenup, too. I told her it was just a formality to protect her inheritance, and she didn't even blink. So stupidly trusting." My mind couldn't make sense of the words. It was like I was underwater, and everything was muffled and far away. He said my family's money? A prenup? What was he talking about? My family didn't have old money. We were comfortable, but we weren't rich. We were just a regular family. Yeah, the lawyer drew it up for me. It says all my debt is separate. So when I get out of this casino mess, her family will never know a thing. I just need to get this over with, get that money, and pay off the guys I owe. It's a gold mine, man." The words hit me like a slap in the face. My world started to spin. Casino mess? Debt? He was talking about me, about my family, about my wedding like it was a business deal. The man I loved, the man I was about to marry, was just using me. It wasn't real. None of it. I pressed my back against the cold wall, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. I heard him laugh again, that ugly, empty sound. I'll be able to pay off my debts and finally get the girl I actually want. He paused for a moment and my whole body went cold. "Yeah, Cassandra. She's coming to the reception later. I told her I'd be with her in a month. Just had to get this little problem out of the way first. It's just business. Nothing personal." The last few words were like a dagger in my heart. Nothing personal. He said that like my feelings, my love, my entire life was nothing to him. A small, inconvenient problem to get out of the way. My heart shattered into a million tiny pieces. The dream I was living in a moment ago was now a dark, ugly nightmare. The man I was about to give my life to was a stranger, a cruel and heartless liar. Tears pricked my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. I had to be strong. I had to know for sure. I had to see it with my own eyes. I didn't want to believe it, but the proof was there, right behind that wall, in his own voice. He was telling his secret to some stranger, a secret that was about to ruin my life. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to scream or cry. I looked down at my beautiful white dress, at the lace and the silk. It was a costume. This whole wedding was a show, and I was just a puppet in his play. I felt a new kind of emotion well up inside me, a cold, hard feeling that was stronger than the pain. It was a rage, so deep it burned. He thought he had me fooled. He thought he had won. But he was wrong. He had no idea who he was messing with. I would not walk down that aisle as his clueless bride. I would walk down that aisle as a woman with a plan. He had betrayed me, but he had also made a huge mistake. He had underestimated me. He had given me a weapon, and I was going to use it. The wedding was still happening, but it would not be a celebration of his victory. It would be the beginning of his end. My perfect day was over, but my revenge was just beginning. My legs felt like they were filled with cement. The walls of the little storage room seemed to close in on me, but it was nothing compared to the walls that were crumbling inside my head. The words kept playing over and over. Asterisk, a gold mine. Just business. Nothing personal. Asterisk, he said that about me. About us. The man I was about to marry, the man I loved with my whole heart, was a complete stranger. A cold, calculating monster. My mom's voice, muffled by the door, called my name. "Elena? Honey, are you okay? The song is about to start." I took a shaky breath, then another. I had to pull myself together. If I walked out there now, red-faced and teary, he would know something was wrong. He would see it in my eyes. And he would charm his way out of it, just like he always did. I couldn't let him. I couldn't let him win this easy. My heart was broken, but a new, cold fire was starting to burn in my belly. It felt like a stone, a heavy, solid weight of fury. I had to know more. I had to prove everything. And the only way to do that was to play along. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, smoothing out my expression. I took a deep breath, letting the fresh, cool air of the room fill my lungs. I reached for the door handle and pulled it open, stepping back out into the light. My mom looked at me with concern. "What took you so long? Did you find the pearl?" I gave her a small, fake smile. "No, but it's okay. It's barely noticeable. Don't worry, Mom." She looked at me for a moment longer, her eyes searching mine. For a second, I thought she saw something, the pain, the shock, the silent rage. But then she just smiled and said, "All right, let's get you ready then. It's time." I walked with her to the big oak doors of the barn. My dad was standing there, his face so full of pride it almost broke my heart all over again. He held out his arm and I took it, my hand trembling a little. He squeezed my hand gently. "You ready, pumpkin?" I nodded, unable to speak. I looked at the big doors in front of me. On the other side was my future. Or what I thought was my future. Now, it was just a stage. I had to walk onto that stage and act my part. The music started, and the doors slowly swung open. The light was blinding. Everyone was there, all the people we loved, all the people who were so happy for us. They were all standing, smiling, looking at me. They saw a happy bride, a woman in love. They had no idea they were looking at a ghost. My dad and I started walking slowly toward the altar. Every step felt like a mile. My beautiful dress felt heavy, like a suit of armor. I held my head high, a fake smile plastered on my face. And there he was, Marcus. He was standing at the end of the aisle, looking like a perfect picture. His hair was neat, his suit fit him perfectly, and his smile was a work of art. The smile I used to love, the one that made me feel so safe, now looked like a horrible lie. His eyes, the warm, brown eyes I had stared into for 3 years, were empty. They weren't looking at me with love. They were looking at an object, at a prize. He thought he had already won. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but it wasn't from the cold. It was from the deep-seated anger that was growing inside me. He wasn't even looking at me the whole time. His eyes were constantly moving, shifting around the room. I followed his gaze and saw her. A woman in a black dress, a few rows back, smiling at him. Her smile was a secret, a knowing look that made my blood run cold. It was her, Cassandra, the mistress, the accomplice. My heart twisted in my chest. He was sharing this with her, this terrible, ugly secret. We finally reached the front, and my dad gave my hand to Marcus. "Take care of my daughter, son," my dad said, his voice thick with emotion. Marcus just smiled and nodded, a quick, empty gesture. He held my hand, and his touch, which used to make me feel warm, now felt like a stranger's. It was cold and foreign. The pastor started to speak, his voice warm and gentle. I didn't hear a word he said. All I heard was the echo of Marcus's words in my head. Asterisk, gold mine. Just business. Nothing personal. Asterisk, I just stood there, staring at him, pretending to be the woman I was an hour ago. He said his vows first. Words of love and forever and happiness. They were lies, all of them. I watched his lips move, and I wanted to scream, to tear his perfect little mask off his face. But I didn't. I held it all inside, a silent storm. Then it was my turn. The pastor looked at me, a kind, expectant look in his eyes. He said the words for me to repeat. I, Elena, take you, Marcus, to be my husband. My voice was a little shaky, but I got the words out. I looked into his eyes, and he held my gaze for a moment, that fake, charming smile on his face. I saw the flash of triumph in his eyes, the look of a man who thought he had just pulled off the perfect crime. He didn't know that I knew. He had no idea the storm that was brewing. When I said, I do, it felt like I was signing my name on a different kind of contract. A contract for revenge. The kiss was like a horror movie. His lips on mine were cold. I just stood there, numb. All I could think about was the woman in the black dress, the knowing smile on her face. Then we were walking back up the aisle hand in hand, everyone cheering. It was all a lie. A beautiful, terrible, gut-wrenching lie. The reception was a blur. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do. I smiled, I laughed, I hugged people. My face hurt from holding the expression. I looked for Cassandra. She was there, at a table in the back, laughing with some of Marcus's friends. She was beautiful, with long, dark hair and a confident look. I felt a surge of pure, raw fury. She knew, too. She wasn't on it. I needed to act. I needed to find a way to get my hands on his phone. I watched him all night. He was the perfect groom. He danced with me, he talked with my family, he was charming and funny. It was all an act. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. An hour later, I saw my chance. He was talking to his best man, and he placed his phone on the table next to a half-empty wine glass. I walked over, my heart pounding in my chest. Honey, I said, putting my arm around him. We have to get a selfie. We haven't taken a single one all night. He looked surprised for a second, but then his perfect smile came back. Of course, my love. I pulled his phone off the table. I'll use yours, I said. The light is better. I held the phone up, a cheesy grin on my face. Say cheese. Click. I held the phone a moment longer, pretending to check the picture. I quickly went to his text messages, found a conversation with Cassandra, and scrolled through it, my eyes racing. It was all there. Their little jokes about me, their plans, the details of his gambling debt. I took a few screenshots, my finger moving fast and shaky. I sent them all to my email address. Then I went back, acting like I was still looking at the picture. I deleted the screenshots from his phone's photos and sent messages. It was just a few seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. When I handed the phone back to him, he just slipped it into his pocket without a second thought. He had no idea what I had just done. I smiled at him, a real smile this time, but it was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of pure, cold satisfaction. The night went on, a blur of music and forced conversation. I danced with my family, I pretended to be happy. But all I could think about was the evidence on my phone, the truth. The next day, I would get to work. Marcus had no idea what was coming. He thought he had a gold mine. But he was about to find out that he had just married a ticking time bomb. The morning after my wedding felt like a completely different world. I woke up in the big, beautiful bed in my new home, the one Marcus and I had bought together. The sun was streaming in through the window, but the light felt cold and wrong. He was sleeping next to me, his arm draped across my waist. He looked so peaceful, so handsome. For a second, a flash of the old feelings came back, the ones of love and comfort. Then the images from last night hit me all over again. The cruel laugh, the texts, the cold look in his eyes at the altar. I felt a wave of revulsion so strong it made me feel sick. I carefully moved his arm, inching away from him as quietly as I could. I got out of bed and walked to the bathroom, closing the door softly behind me. I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was a mess from sleeping, and the makeup I had cried off was smeared under my eyes. I didn't even look like myself. I looked like a stranger, a ghost of the happy woman I used to be. The perfect bride from yesterday was gone, and in her place was this hollow, heartbroken thing. I took a shower, the hot water washing away the dirt and grime from the day before, but not the feeling of being used. My mind was racing. I had to get out of this house. I couldn't be near him. I needed to see someone I could trust. I needed Sarah. I got dressed in a pair of old jeans and a t-shirt, not bothering with my new clothes. Marcus was still sleeping. I walked to the bedroom door, then stopped. I turned back and looked at him, at the man who had lied to me for years, who had fooled everyone. I felt a cold knot of fury tighten in my chest. He was a monster wearing a human face, a predator who had tricked me into his trap. I crept out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I went to the kitchen, grabbed my car keys, and scribbled a quick note on a piece of paper. Went to see my parents. We'll be back later. I left it on the counter, knowing he would believe it. He probably thought I was just being a good daughter. He didn't know I was starting a war. I drove the hour-long drive to Sarah's house, the road seeming to blur past me. The world outside looked so normal and bright, but my world was shattered. When I got to her front door, I just stood there for a minute, my hand shaking. I didn't know how to tell her. How do you tell your best friend that your perfect wedding was all a lie, a setup for a greedy, fake man? Sarah opened the door, her face full of concern when she saw me. Elena? What's wrong? I thought you were on your honeymoon right now. The words just came tumbling out of me. The secret phone call. The fake love. The debt. The mistress. All of it. I told her everything, my voice a mix of tears and anger. Sarah's face went from concern to absolute horror. She led me inside and sat me down on her couch, wrapping me in a blanket. Oh my God, Elena. Are you serious? I don't believe it. I have proof, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots from Marcus's phone. The text from Cassandra, talking about me as if I were a piece of property. her helping him with his plans. Sarah read them, her face getting paler with every text. "He's an animal," she whispered, her voice filled with a quiet, burning anger. "An absolute animal." She was silent for a minute, thinking. Sarah was a smart girl, a genius with computers. She worked for a big tech company and she knew everything about everything. "Okay," she said, her eyes now lit with a cold determination that matched my own. "We need to get more. We need to go through his stuff. There has to be more. This isn't just about a prenup and some debt. This is bigger." We sat down at her kitchen table, and she pulled out her laptop. We started with the little bit of information I had. The name Cassandra, the mention of gambling debt, the name of his fake real estate company. Sarah started to type, her fingers flying across the keys. She went through his email, his bank accounts, everything she could get into with the information I had stolen from his phone. I just sat there, my heart pounding, watching her work. Every click felt like a hammer hitting my heart. The first thing we found was the bank statements. A shocking amount of money was missing from his accounts. Money that should have been there but wasn't. Then we found the transactions, all going to different places in Atlantic City. He wasn't a real estate investor. He was a gambler, and he was losing big time. It wasn't just a mess, as he had called it. It was a complete disaster. He was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, maybe even more. The next thing we found was the fake business ventures. The company he worked for was a ghost, a website with a fake address and phone number. The people listed as his partners didn't exist. He had created a whole fake life for himself. My stomach twisted into a knot. I thought about all the times he told me he was traveling for work, about the long phone calls he made. It was all a lie. "Wait a minute," Sarah said, her voice quiet. She was looking at a file, a PDF document. "Look at this." She turned her screen to me. It was a forged letter. A letter on my family's business letterhead, asking for a loan. It had my father's signature at the bottom. But my father never signed anything like this. My father was the most honest man I knew. He had signed it himself, forged it perfectly. He was planning on using this to try and get money for my family, to try and save himself from his mess. My whole body trembled with a cold, pure rage. He wasn't just a liar and a cheater. He was a criminal. He was trying to take advantage of the people I loved most in the world. He was trying to ruin my family. He was even worse than I had thought. My heart wasn't just broken anymore. It was burning with a need for justice. Then, we found the final piece of the puzzle. I saw a file with Cassandra's name on it. It wasn't just a few texts. It was a whole folder of conversations. Emails, too. They had been planning this for months. They had been working together. She wasn't just some other girl he was cheating on me with. She was his accomplice. They were in this together. They had worked as a team to lie to me, to fool me, to use me. They had laughed at me. The thought made me want to throw up. I sat back in the chair, my head in my hands. The full scope of his betrayal was more massive than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about a man who didn't love me. It was about a man who was a criminal, a liar, a parasite who had planned to drain my family dry. I felt so foolish, so stupid. How could I have not seen it? He was so good at it. A perfect actor. Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. "Elena, this isn't your fault. He's a professional liar. He's sick." I looked at her, my eyes filled with a new kind of tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of pure, cold determination. "I need to talk to a lawyer," I said, my voice steady. "I have all the proof I need. He's not just going to get a divorce. He's going to pay for this. For all of it." My stomach felt hollow, but my mind was clear. The pain was still there, a constant ache, but it was overshadowed by my purpose. I had been a victim for too long. Now it was my turn to play the game. And I wasn't just playing to win. I was playing to destroy him. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about justice. And I was going to make sure he got exactly what he deserved. He thought he was so smart. But he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had married me. The days after my wedding felt like a weird, confusing dream. I was living in a nightmare, but everyone around me still thought it was a fairy tale. I stayed at Sarah's place, telling my family I was just taking a few days to decompress after the crazy wedding. Marcus kept texting me, asking when I was coming home. The messages were so full of fake love, little hearts and words like, "I miss you, my beautiful wife." I couldn't even look at them without feeling sick. I just sent back short answers like, "Soon" or "I'm fine." He had no idea I wasn't just fine. I was a bomb about to go off. The morning after our long night of digging, Sarah set up a meeting with a lawyer her company used. His name was Mr. Roberts, and he looked like a man who had seen everything. He was older, with kind eyes and a serious face. We walked into his fancy office, a quiet room with a big window overlooking the city, and I put a big folder on his desk. Inside were the printouts of Marcus's texts, the screenshots, the fake documents, the bank statements. Everything we had found. I started to talk, my voice a little shaky at first, telling him the whole story from the day I met Marcus to the phone call I overheard in the storage room. I watched his face as I spoke. He listened, his expression never changing, just watching me carefully. When I finished, I sat back in my chair, the silence in the room feeling heavy. He picked up the folder and started to go through the papers, his serious face now showing a hint of surprise. He looked at the screenshots, then at the forged business letter, then at the bank records. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. "Miss," he stopped for a second, a small, kind smile on his face. "Elena, this is remarkable. The amount of evidence you've gathered is staggering. Most of my clients come to me with nothing but a gut feeling." He spent another hour going through everything, making notes on a yellow legal pad. He talked on the phone with his assistant, asking them to double-check a few things, to look up some of the businesses Marcus had created. When he hung up, he looked at me and Sarah, his face grim. "It's all here. The man you married isn't who he says he is. The business he runs is a shell company. The real estate deals are fake. He's not a successful investor. He's a gambler and a bad one at that. He's hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt." My heart ached with every word he said, even though I already knew it. Hearing it from a lawyer made it real, and it hurt more than I thought it would. Mr. Roberts continued, "He's not just a liar, Elena. He's a criminal. The forged letter with your father's signature on it is a felony. This isn't just a divorce case. This is a criminal case waiting to happen." I looked at Sarah, and she squeezed my hand. We had worked so hard, all night, digging and searching, and it was all true. Everything. He was a monster. "So, what happens now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mr. Roberts leaned forward, his elbows on his desk. "First, we get an emergency order to freeze his assets. We make sure he can't touch any more of your money or your family's money. We have more than enough evidence for that. Then, we file for a divorce, but we'll also file a separate civil lawsuit for damages. For fraud, for emotional distress, for everything he's put you through. We can sue him for so much he'll be left with nothing. Absolutely nothing." I listened, my mind working through everything he was saying. Nothing. Marcus had wanted everything from me, and now I was going to make sure he had nothing left. It felt like a small, cold victory. "But there's more," Mr. Roberts said. "This is big. This isn't just about getting your money back. This is about making sure he doesn't do this to anyone else. We can use the information you've gathered to go public. We can tell his story, his real story, to the world. We can expose him, not just in a court of law, but in the court of public opinion. He's been a fraud for years, living a life of luxury off the backs of others. We can make sure everyone knows." The idea of going public scared me a little. I had always been a private person. I didn't want the world to know my pain. But then I thought of all the other women he had lied to. I thought of Cassandra, his accomplice. He had no shame, no guilt. He would just move on to the next person, the next gold mine, as he had called me. I had a chance to stop him. That night, back at Sarah's apartment, I couldn't sleep. Marcus had sent me more texts. "I'm sorry. I should have come to your family's place. I'm just so busy with work." Lies, all of them. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the keypad. I felt a wave of disgust so strong it almost made me sick. I didn't respond. I knew I never would again. He didn't deserve a response. He didn't deserve anything from me. The next day, Mr. Roberts called me. The emergency order went through. His accounts are frozen. He's going to find out soon. He's going to be very angry. Be careful, Elena. Don't let him near you. Do you want to go forward with the public exposure? I took a deep breath. I thought about the man I had married, the one who had pretended to love me, who had laughed at me behind my back. I thought about the way he had looked at me at the altar, like I was a thing to be owned. And I thought about all the other women, the other victims. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about justice. Yes, I said, my voice steady and strong. Let's do it. I felt a change inside me, a shift. The pain was still there, but it wasn't the main feeling anymore. It was the fire of a woman who had been betrayed but wasn't broken. I was in a war and I was going to fight. Marcus had made a big mistake. He had married me, and he had underestimated me. He had no idea what was coming. I was his wife, but I was also his biggest problem. And I was going to make sure he knew it. The unraveling had begun, and it was going to be beautiful. From a safe distance, of course. I was done being a victim. Now, I was a force to be reckoned with. The days that followed felt like a movie, but I wasn't just watching anymore. I was directing it. The rage and pain had settled into a cold, quiet purpose. My lawyer, Mr. Roberts, and I met several times, laying out the steps of the plan. It was big, maybe too big, but I knew in my heart it was the only way to get justice. Marcus wasn't just a liar. He was a danger to other people. I had to stop him. My best friend Sarah was my partner in crime. We spent a whole day working on the anonymous website. We called it The Truth About a Liar. The design was simple, just a white background with black letters, like a book. We uploaded everything. The pictures of the forged business documents, the detailed bank statement showing his gambling debt, the screenshot of his texts with Cassandra. We wrote a simple, chilling story to go with it all. A story of a man who fooled everyone for years, a man who married for money and not for love. We didn't use his name, not yet. We would link to it later. It felt powerful, like we were building a weapon. While we were doing all of that, I was also setting the trap. I knew Marcus was freaking out. His bank accounts were frozen, and he couldn't get any money. He was texting me nonstop. Baby, where are you? I'm so worried. I need to talk to you. His texts went from sweet to desperate. I just ignored them, leaving him to sweat. I knew he was broke, and he was getting scared. That's when I knew it was time for the next step. I made the call. My heart was pounding, but my voice was calm. Marcus, I said, trying to sound a little fragile. I need to see you. I can't go on like this. He was quiet for a second, and I could practically hear his mind working. Oh, Elena, thank God. I've been so worried about you. Where are you? I'm at my parents', I said, a small lie to keep him in the dark. But I don't want to talk here. It's too personal. I want to talk, just us, with our families. I want to fix this. Please, can we have a dinner? Just a small dinner, with my parents and your parents? I want to try and fix us. He was quiet again. I could feel his brain working. He was probably thinking I had figured out some of his lies, but not all of them. He was thinking he could talk his way out of it. He was a master liar, and he would think he could get me back on his side, get me to give him money, get me to unfreeze his accounts. I could feel his arrogance through the phone line. Yes, baby, he said, his voice full of fake relief. Of course. Let's fix this. I love you so much. I hung up the phone and felt a wave of disgust so strong it made me gag. He really thought he could just show up, flash his perfect smile, and get everything back. He was so wrong. Next, I called my parents. I told them I had a plan, a final plan to deal with Marcus. I didn't tell them the full truth, not yet. I just told them I needed them there, and I needed them to trust me. My mom was worried, but my dad, seeing the cold fire in my eyes, just nodded. Whatever you need, honey. We're here for you. They had a feeling something was wrong, and they had seen how I had changed in just a few days. They knew this was serious. I booked a private dining room at a nice restaurant. I told them it was a quiet place for a private talk. I made sure to rent a projector and a screen. It was all a little crazy, a little bit like something out of a movie. But my life was a movie now, a very twisted and ugly one. I was the star, and I was making sure the ending was perfect. The day of the dinner, I was a wreck. I was so nervous, my hands were shaking. My heart was beating so fast, I thought it would jump out of my chest. I got dressed in a simple black dress, something elegant and classy. I didn't want to look like a victim. I wanted to look like a queen. Sarah came to my place and helped me with my hair and makeup. She was a silent support, a rock. "You've got this," she said, as she did my makeup. "He has no idea what's coming." I looked in the mirror. I didn't see the heartbroken girl anymore. I saw a warrior. My eyes were clear and cold. I wasn't doing this for a divorce. I was doing this for justice. I was doing this for every person he had lied to, every person he had hurt. I was going to make him pay. We arrived at the restaurant first. Sarah was coming later, just to be there if I needed her, but she would stay in the background. I went to the private room. The table was set for 6 people, with fresh flowers in the middle. The lights were dim and warm. It looked so peaceful. It was the perfect setting for a final, terrible act. I set up the projector and the screen, making sure everything worked. I put the flash drive in the laptop with all the evidence on it. Everything was ready. A few minutes later, my parents arrived. They hugged me tight, still a little worried but trusting. My dad gave me a small smile. "We're here, pumpkin. For you." I felt a tear fall down my face. I wiped it away quickly. I didn't want him to see me weak. I had to be strong. Then, Marcus arrived with his parents. He was in a fancy suit, looking just as perfect as he did on our wedding day. He smiled at me, that fake, charming smile that used to melt my heart. It made me sick now. "Baby," he said, and he tried to hug me. I stiffened, taking a small step back. "Let's just sit down," I said, my voice cold. His parents looked a little confused. My parents looked worried. We all sat down at the big table. Marcus tried to act like nothing was wrong, trying to make small talk. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, but I just stared back, my face blank. "So," he said after a minute of silence, "I know things have been a little crazy, but I really want to fix this. I know you've been upset about things, and I just want to say I'm sorry. I love you, and I promise things will be different." He thought his fake apology would be enough. He thought he could just say the words and get away with it. He was so stupid. I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I was about to end his life. Not his real life, but the one he had built on lies. The one he had built on me. "Marcus," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I agree. Things will be different." I reached under the table for the remote. I clicked a button. The lights in the room went dim, and the projector turned on, casting a bright light on the screen behind him. He didn't notice at first. He just smiled, a small, knowing look in his eyes. "What's this?" he said, still smiling. He turned to look at the screen, and I watched his face as his perfect, charming smile disappeared. It was replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated horror. The first image on the screen was a screenshot of his bank statements, showing the hundreds of thousands of dollars he had lost in gambling debt. The image had a big, red circle around the numbers. My revenge was just beginning, and he had no idea what was coming. The first thing I saw was the look on his face. The perfect mask of a handsome, charming husband broke into a million pieces. His eyes went wide, and his jaw went slack. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the screen, at the numbers he thought no one would ever see. The silence in the room was so thick you could almost touch it. My parents, who had been sitting quietly, looked at the screen and then at Marcus, their faces full of confusion. His parents just sat there, their hands in their laps, looking like they were waiting for someone to explain a bad joke. "What is this, Elena?" Marcus finally said, his voice a dry whisper. "Is this some kind of joke?" I didn't answer. I just clicked the remote and the slide changed. The next image was a screenshot of his text messages with Cassandra. The ones where they talked about me, about my family, about the gold mine. A small gasp came from my mother. My father's face went white. Marcus's parents looked from him to me, a dawning horror on their faces. This is not what it looks like, Marcus stammered, his eyes darting from me to his parents. She's made this up. It's a fake. I clicked the remote again, and the next slide appeared. It was the screenshot of the forged letter with my father's signature on it, the letter he was going to use to steal from my family. My dad pushed his chair back from the table. Marcus, he said, his voice low and dangerous. What is this? Marcus's perfect facade was completely gone now. He stood up, his face red with rage. This is insane, he yelled, pointing a finger at me. She's crazy. She's making this all up. I don't know where she got this, but it's all a lie. I didn't flinch. I just looked him in the eye, my voice calm and cold. Is it a lie, Marcus? Is the hundreds of thousands of dollars you've lost at casinos in Atlantic City a lie? Are the fake real estate deals you've been running for years a lie? Or are they just part of the big lie you've been living? I clicked the remote, and the slideshow continued. A picture of the shell company he had created. A list of all his different phone numbers and emails. The names of the other women he had been cheating on me with, women I had never even heard of. It just went on and on, a long, ugly list of his lies. The silence was back, but this time it was different. It was the silence of shock and disgust. Marcus looked around the room, his eyes full of panic. He looked at his parents, at my parents, at me. He had nowhere to run. The lies he had built his life on were all falling apart right in front of him. I can explain, he said, but his voice was trembling. Explain what, Marcus? I asked, my voice still calm. Explain why you married me? Was it for love? Or was it because you were a desperate, broke man who needed my family's money to pay off your gambling debts? His face went from red to white. He had nothing to say. I turned to his parents. Your son isn't a successful businessman. He's a fraud. He has been lying to everyone for years to get money. He didn't marry me for love. He married me for money. He was going to use me, and then he was going to walk away. His mother started to cry, a small, quiet sound that broke my heart. His father, a proud, quiet man, just stared at his son, his face a mask of disappointment and shame. I looked at my own parents. My dad's face was hard and angry, but my mom was just crying, her hands over her mouth. The pain I had been feeling for days was now theirs too, and it felt terrible. Don't you see? Marcus yelled, turning to his parents. She's lying. She's trying to ruin me. We just got married. We're supposed to be happy. I just laughed, a short, bitter sound. We were never happy, Marcus. That was just an act. My whole life with you was an act. You pretended to be in love with me, so you could get your hands on my family's money. You pretended to be a good man, so you could get your hands on my family's inheritance. Everything was a lie. He lunged at me, his eyes full of a wild, desperate rage. You bitch, he screamed. You're trying to ruin me. My father stood up quickly, getting in front of me. Don't you dare touch her, he said, his voice low and threatening. Marcus stopped, looking at my father with a new kind of fear in his eyes. He had never seen my father like this. No one had. My dad was a man of quiet strength. I didn't have to do this, Marcus, I said, my voice steady. I could have just filed for divorce and walked away. But I decided that wasn't enough. You didn't just hurt me. You hurt my family. You hurt your own family. You tried to ruin everything. And I decided you wouldn't get away with it. He didn't say anything. He just stood there looking at me, his face pale and his hands clenched into fists. His perfect world had been shattered. I looked at his parents, who were now trying to get him to sit down, to calm him down. They looked at me, their faces full of a terrible apology, a silent understanding of what had happened. They were just as much a victim of his lies as I was. I'm sorry you all had to see this, I said, my voice a little softer. But the truth is, I couldn't keep this a secret. He would have just moved on, lied to someone else, and hurt another family. Marcus's father finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "Get out," he said to his son. "Get out of here now." Marcus looked at his father, his eyes wide with shock. He couldn't believe it. The man who had always been so proud of him was now looking at him with nothing but disgust. He looked at me one last time, a look of pure, raw hatred on his face. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving his parents and me in a stunned silence. The dinner party of truth was over. The perfect, happy life I had thought I was living was gone. But in its place was a new life, a life of freedom. He was gone. The monster was gone. I looked at my parents, who were still sitting in shocked silence. My dad came over and gave me a hug, holding me tight. "I'm so sorry, Pumpkin," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry we didn't see it." "It's okay, Dad," I said, a tear finally falling down my face. He was good. He fooled all of us. That night I went home. Not to the home I had shared with him, but to my parents' home. My beautiful white dress, the dress I had worn to my wedding, was still hanging in the closet. I took it out and looked at it. It was a beautiful dress, a symbol of a dream that had died. But it wasn't just a dream. It was a nightmare. I took the dress and tore it in half, then tore it into smaller pieces. The silk, the lace, the beautiful fabric. It was all a lie. I put the pieces in a trash bag and took it outside. I wasn't just throwing away a dress. I was throwing away a lie. And in its place, I was going to build something new. Something real. A few weeks passed, and the world just kept turning. My life, which had felt so loud and crazy, had become quiet again. The dinner party of truth had ended, and the next day my lawyer, Mr. Roberts, made sure everything was put into motion. The anonymous website we had created went public, with a link to a news story that broke a day later. The story was everywhere. On every major news outlet, on every social media site. Marcus, the perfect businessman, the loving fiancé, was revealed to be a complete fraud. The story of our wedding, of his lies, of his gambling debt and his many affairs, was all over the internet. My face wasn't in the news, just his, and his perfect mask was gone forever. I spent most of those weeks at my parents' house. I didn't want to go back to the home Marcus and I had bought. It felt like a tomb, a place where a part of me had died. I spent my days just being. I talked with my mom and dad. I went for long walks with my dog. I sat in the sun and just let the world happen around me. I felt like I was in a long, quiet dream. The rage was gone, and in its place was an emptiness, a hole in my heart. The sadness of losing the man I thought I loved was still there, but it was overshadowed by the sadness of having been so wrong about everything. Then the phone call came from Mr. Roberts. He told me that Marcus had been arrested. He had been trying to run, to leave the country, but the police had been watching him. He was charged with fraud and forgery, with all the things we had found. My heart didn't feel anything at first, just a small, cold beat. He had gotten what he deserved. The man who had pretended to be a prince was now a common criminal. The news was everywhere, a storm of shame and disgrace. His friends and business partners cut him off. He had to declare bankruptcy. The beautiful, perfect life he had built on lies was gone. He was nothing. The person I had spent 3 years with, the man I had married, was now just a memory, a bad taste in my mouth. My revenge was complete. He had lost everything, and I had won. But for a while, winning didn't feel so good. It felt empty. I knew I couldn't stay in that emptiness forever. My best friend Sarah came over one night, bringing a bottle of wine and a pizza. We sat on the floor of my old bedroom, just talking. "You did it, Elena," she said, her voice quiet. "You got him. He can't hurt anyone else now." "I know," I said, but my voice was flat. It doesn't feel like I thought it would." "It's not about feeling good," she said, putting her hand on my arm. "It's about healing. You were broken, Elena. You have to put yourself back together. One piece at a time." Her words hit me hard. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a survivor. And survivors don't just win. They heal. I started with little things. I went to my old job, the one I had left to plan the wedding, and they welcomed me back with open arms. I started to talk to my friends again, to laugh with them. I went on a trip with my parents to a quiet little town by the ocean, just the three of us. We didn't talk about Marcus. We talked about memories from when I was a kid, about what we wanted for the future. The sea air and the quiet nights helped to clear my head. I had decided to go on a trip by myself. I booked a flight to Europe, to a little town in Italy, a place I had always wanted to see. My parents were worried, but I knew I had to do this on my own. It was a journey to find myself again. I walked through old streets. I ate amazing food. I saw art that made my heart feel full. I didn't think about Marcus. I thought about me, about the woman I was becoming. One afternoon, I was sitting at a small cafe in a little plaza, sipping a cappuccino and watching the world go by. The sun was warm on my face, and the air smelled like coffee and fresh bread. A couple walked past, holding hands and laughing. For a second, a pang of sadness went through me, a memory of how I thought my life would be. But then it was gone. It was replaced by a new feeling, a feeling of pure, simple happiness. I was free. I was alive. I was in a beautiful country, and I was on my own, and it was the best feeling in the world. I thought about Marcus and what he was doing now. He was probably in a cold room somewhere alone with nothing. He had lost his freedom, his reputation, his money, and his future. He had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, he had lost it all. My revenge hadn't just destroyed him. It had saved me. It had woken me up from a terrible dream. I looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. They were strong. I wasn't just a bride who had been betrayed. I was a woman who had taken back her life. I looked up and saw my reflection in the cafe window. I smiled, a small, quiet, knowing smile. A little sad, but also full of a new kind of peace. My heart wasn't broken anymore. It was whole, and it was all mine. The perfect dream had died, but in its place, a new, better, and much more real life had begun. Wow. What a journey. I know it was a lot, but I hope this story of betrayal and a new beginning really spoke to you. We all go through things that feel impossible, things that change who we are. But this story shows that even when the worst happens, we have the strength inside us to fight back and build a better life. I'd love to hear what you think. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments below. What do you think was the most powerful moment for Elena? And if you've ever had to overcome something difficult, how did you do it? Your stories matter. Thanks so much for reading.